Hello and welcome to Unsourced. My name is Elvis, and as always, I'm your host. If you can probably hear this, then you might be able to guess that I'm still undergoing this flu situation. I think I'm coming out on the tail end of it right now, so hopefully we can get through this as quickly and cleanly as possible. I'm cutting down a new segment this week because really I think we're just still reeling from Dan DiDio's departure. I think a lot of articles I've seen this week were all about what's going to happen to 5G, and honestly no one has any definitive answers. And let's just do a little quick shots right now. First off, the Suicide Squad sequel has finished filming, so congrats to them. I can't wait to see what happens. And apparently the Y: The Last Man adaptation on FX, which was stalled like a year ago or maybe even more, is finally back in pre-production. They've cast a new Yorick replacing the other actor, and I think the other actor who you might have seen in Dunkirk or The Killing of a Sacred Deer is a really great actor. He's a really capable actor, but I think the new one, who was the mage in the Warcraft movie, makes for a better, more personable, more affable Yorick. So fingers crossed for that. Anyway, let's just head on right into what I read this week. First off, we have A Basket Full of Heads number 5, and this is just a fine issue. It's basically the part of the series where you break down the scope of the story, which is good because there's only 2 issues left after this. And if you remember, one of my worries from last month was my concern over how they were going to be able to parse out what was seeming to be a very knotted storyline over just 3 issues. And well, it seems like a huge exposition and clarity dump is about as good as anything. I'm glad it happened, but at the same time, it doesn't really feel all that earned or that interesting. Just seeing it displayed all out in the open instead of being revealed with finesse or nuance makes it lose a bit here and there. But what keeps the issue above water is how the lead is still written. Her reactions to the backstory and to her character explaining it all are all thoroughly fun and vivacious, just as we've come to expect from this miniseries and that character. Plus, when all is said and done, the set pieces that rear its head at the end of the final pages is a clever and welcome exercise in how much fortitude the main character even has, and why she's so likable and competent. I really can't wait to see where they end up from here. So it's a bit more standard and slow, but an enjoyable pit stop that hopefully means the last 2 issues hit a solid groove, because the pathway is all laid out for it. Overall, 1 thumb up, 1 thumb middle. Next, we have John Constantine Hellblazer number 4, which was a great reset issue. We're past the insane and intense lunacy of the first 3 issues, with a story that matches up with John's own attempts to class everything up. New book, new look, as you might say. And the rest of the issue is a pretty perfect example of why that's impossible. You can set a watch to how much grime and dirt John's new fit gets over the course of the issue, alongside how much it evolves into a haze of extra cured madness. It's a simple issue of almost vignette style escapades and anecdotes and hurdles, with John being latched onto by some hanger-on musician, but leads to a wonderful crescendo in the last 3 pages. It makes me excited for what's to come, but I would be lying if I said that this wasn't a fantastic breather issue to lay the groundwork for whatever happens next. Overall, 2 thumbs up, and I can't wait to see more. I know it's a short little thrift for this issue, but it is more about how the characters play off each other and the wit and the banter and the whole bants, and it would be hard to display that into words other than that the art and the writing are working in tandem to make sure everything hits and you get a great comedic atmosphere out of everything. So I love it. I really do. And lastly, we have Dial H here number 12, which marks the end of the Style H run from Humphreys and Quinones. And well, it was great. I mean, that's kind of obvious given the rest of the run has been fantastic, but it's so good to say it out loud. That this Maxi series hit the landing makes it so enjoyable just to bask in. Does that mean that it's perfect? No, not as such. But it does mean that the creative team had a tightly knit and confident vision and theme for this story, and they let nothing stand in their way of executing that through these pages. What flaws I think this issue might have are very minor in comparison to that. A beat here and there that seems a bit rushed or unnatural, but then I remember how whacked out and wild this series has been, and it seems fruitless to really care about that too much. What this issue excels at is putting a point in where Summer and Miguel's character arcs are concerned, distilling them down to core neurosis and insecurities, and having them blow past that in a perfect display of emotional catharsis turned physical. You don't get more literal than being in a dark place and creating light using self-esteem and friendship. And it works. It's heartening, it's invigorating, and it's lovingly hilarious too. That kind of sums up all 12 issues. It definitely hones in on that more, and the solidarity and resolve of Summer and Miguel, making the stakes not as intense as they could be, but leads to wonderful closure and character cap-offs. And that's the highest priority, and honestly the best choice they could have made. Because unless you work on the character, and unless you make the character journeys satisfactory, then even if you have a great, climactic ending, it's always going to feel a little bit more lackluster, and maybe won't be as well remembered as it could be. but this one sails right past that. The strides it takes of the two characters and their states of being are impeccable and make a perfect complement to China Miéville's dialect series. The pressures of youth and of adulthood. They make a perfect duet. Can't wait to have the luxe of this run to pair with the previous one on my shelf. I'm gonna miss Summer Miguel, but this is a series that will surely last for years. And, that's something to really be grateful for. Also, I did read Amethyst by Amy Reeder this week, but it didn't really leave an impression on me, and I don't want to do her a disservice or the character a disservice by, trying to think of anything to say about it. So I'm gonna wait until I get a greater grasp on the story it's telling. Next up, we have what I watched this week. I only watched one thing this week, which was I Am Not Okay With This, the new Netflix Charles Forsman adaptation, and it's a mixed bag. On the one hand, it's from the same creative team behind the other Forsman adaptation that Netflix had a hand in, which was The End of the Fucking World, which was brilliant. That show took a pretty basic and almost bare-bones story and comic and ran with it, expanding it and playing around with the material in a very exciting and very engaging way, a way that the comic failed to live up to. I Am Not Okay With This does not. In fact, it pretty much is a retread of The End of the Fucking World in terms of tone, style, characters, and storytelling. And that's a shame, because despite Forsman's very distinctive style that he's done over his career, the original graphic novel for I'm Not Okay With This tells a completely different story all on its own to The End of the Fucking World. There are so many things in the source material that could have been used in a variety of impactful and original ways. Instead, what we get is something that is very hammered into shape to fit into a wholly different mold, and it's a very worn and used out mold to begin with. It really loses a lot of what made it unique in the process. The show can be fun at times, and the formula they developed for The End of the Fucking World holds kinda solidly, but it's definitely more generic, a bit more shallow, and a lot more cliche. It feels very stock, standard, and cardboard. This even extends to the characters and the situations, which can be fun and enjoyable, but are always held down by everything else around it. It never lives up to its potential, and it stays distractingly undercooked most of the way through, pretty much propped up by, like I said, old gimmicks, old cliches, and weird nostalgia pandering. Thankfully, the season is short, some episodes barely reaching 17 minutes, and it does set up for a second season. But the way it even goes about that is just unoriginal, and it makes complete waste of a really amazing beat from the finale of the original graphic novel, and that really sours it a lot for me. I don't think I'll be back for a second season, mainly because the things I thought the comic did surprisingly well, and I would have loved to see handled with care and tact, are no longer in the picture. Overall, 5.5 out of 10, one thumb middle, one thumb down. And time for an entirely new segment that might never get repeated ever, hopefully, is what I listened to this week. Earlier this week, it started making rounds on comics Twitter that the artist named Grimes, who I know nothing about musically or otherwise, had a concept album based on the new gods in the fourth world. Well, in her own words, it's a concept album about a nature goddess exacting Gaia's revenge on humanity based on Greco-Roman culture. But it has a song called Dark Side, so I'm calling bullshit on that. Besides, Greco-Roman stuff is exactly what Kirby was inspired by anyway, at least in part, so it's on solid ground. Anyway, I decided out of pure curiosity to listen to the album, and here is my breakdown of it. Song by song. The first song is called So Heavy I Fell Through the Earth. And while I could make the case, as with a few of these songs, that this is a loose reference to Final Crisis and the fate of Darkseid, it's hard to make anything out of it. It's a 6-minute song of heavy vocalization and ooze intercut with the main lyric of the title. And that's really all I can make out from it. The next song is the obliquely titled Darkseid, and this is where the Final Crisis tones come to the forefront. It sounds exactly like the sort of song that would have been playing in Club Darkseid, and the only non-Mandarin lyric is about souls and body swapping, which kind of pins that point in how they inhabited human hosts on Earth. The Mandarin lyrics go harder, about traveling the vast distances of space, shadows taking over, and sacrificing for goals. So yeah, it could be Darkseid, it could be how they fell after the death of the new gods, but it could also be about Orion, and it could be about the Great War. So here and there, it's got a nice darkly techno beat, which I dig, but not that much. The next song is called Delete Forever, and it's apparently inspired by Grimes' young pop artist friends who have died to drug overdoses over the last couple of years. So I'll move on rather than be gauche and try to connect it to the Forever people. Following this is a song titled Violence, which has only 3 lyrics and is all about being in a masochistic relationship. Internally, it could be Orion and his own conflict about his new genesis or apocalyptic self. Externally, it could be about granting goodness and the female furies. Just about untangling deep connection connection with physical harm that could easily be seen in their light. Next up is 4 a.m. and it's a really almost madcap sounding song about being late at night in a manic haze. This is going to be a stretch in the loosest sense, but when the chorus kicks in and it almost gets this Benny Hill style frenetic beat, I could only imagine Light Ray, like being out and enjoying humanity and the nightlight. So sue me, that's the tone I get from that song. After that, we get the general song called New Gods, which is basically like, what if the franchise had a Bond song? It's as minimalistic as the rest, but it hammers home this idea that the old gods are past and that we seek the help in the light of the new gods. Singling one out in particular, a man. They call out a man, which could be Orion. It's the closest we get to a song that features him or is about him until later, unfortunately. Next up, we have My Name is Dark, which is a Forever People song. It's sung from the point of view of a girl who apparently everyone is reaching out for, who is playing with fire and who swears they'll never sleep again. So, beautiful dreamer, and how everyone thinks she's connected to the anti-life equation. And we also have anarchic imagery of doing drugs, never trusting the government or your friends or anyone else. It's almost like Desaad, Glorious Godfrey, and the Just Fire is there too. Maybe it's just that rebellious, lethal spirit the song is about, coupled with the undertone of how others can manipulate that sentiment. It's pure Forever People and their cast of villains. After that, you have You'll Miss Me When I'm Not Around, a song about vindictive suicide. And so I got nothing for that. Apparently it's tied to her actual stated goal more, about Gaia's revenge over us ruining the earth. So that makes sense. I'm not going to try and touch that. The next to last song is called Before the Fever, which Grimes also said she wanted to represent death, which could lead you to believe that's about the Black Racer. But looking at the lyrics, it's about getting lost again and again, and there being no way out, but one way in. It sounds a lot like the Omega Effect. Dying again and again and getting lost through multiple lifetimes, and not having any way out. It's a perfect Omega Effect song, I have to say about that. And finally, we get to I Adore You, a song about being in love with someone. I'm going to take the easy route here and say it's about Orion and Becca. While the love in the song is unrequited, it has lyrics like, choose, I say as my fingers tremble, this is who I am, and you are who you are. Reminding me a lot of how Orion came out with his apocalyptic monster face to Becca in The Hunger Dogs, and how subconscious he was about that. And that's about it. There's one bonus Japan exclusive song that's about an AI taking over humanity, which if I had to stretch, I'd say more Glorious Godfrey, or even just outright anti-life equation, especially since the last part of that song is just the word submit repeated over and over again. So, if it's anything, it would be that. Overall, obviously very loosely connected to the fourth world. If I had to guess anything, I'd say that Grimes probably really liked Morrison or Final Crisis, and so threw in a few winks and nods here in the album, but nothing more than that. But it's fun to speculate and try to connect. More or less, I guess I'll just stick with that one Rom Zombie song where he throws in a wink and a nod to the Forever People and Flash Gordon. Overall, 1 thumb up, 1 thumb middle, and 6 out of 10. Anyway, that's it for this week. I didn't ask for any questions this week because my throat is still kind of sore and I don't want to risk it. Thank you all for listening. So I just want to say thank you to everyone out there who's ever sent a question, comment, or topic. It means so much to me. I'm so grateful for that. And I can't wait to feel better so I can start answering questions again. And I just want to say, if anyone out there has their own question, comment, or topic you want to hear discussed on our show, you can always find me on Twitter at THE_SNICKMAN. I want to give a shout out to the co-writers for the show at DOTEMCEE. Please share them out. They're amazing. Give them a follow. They really deserve it. And well, thank you so much for listening, and see you again next time. Hope you have a great week.